I did it. It's done.
Oh, okay. I didn't get a message or, okay, now it is. All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. This is Jasjeet, and today we'll be looking at how we can automate some of our pre-onboarding process where you would basically onboard a new person. And before you do that, you basically need certain details about their legal name, their address, their contact information before you can roll out an offer to them. So we'll be basically looking into a couple of platforms and technologies, which is a mix and match of Microsoft Forms, Power Automate, OneDrive a little bit, yes, and then we'll be using Word template basically and filling data dynamically over there. And we will also be looking into adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams to make it really, really seamless for our end users to process on the HR side. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or put that question in the chat window. I'll keep my eyes out on the other window. I have two windows with me, so I'll be keeping an eye on the chat window as well. So I don't have much on the slides specifically, but yes, this is a little bit about me. Those I see a lot of familiar faces. I wish I was in person doing this event, but yeah, pandemic is taking a toll on everyone. Make sure to put out some relevant tweets. It's GBPIND 2021 and GBP 2021. Those are the two hashtags we'll be looking forward for. We will be, at the end, giving away some prizes as well. So make sure you give some constructive feedback, whether it's a positive or a negative one. It doesn't matter. Please provide us with constructive feedback on how this event was and how these sessions were. We really need to know your feedback so we can improve for our next events. I am the CEO of a small company, Vanthara Technologies. We are basically Gold Microsoft partners, and we cater to US small business enterprises and to large business enterprises as well, small, medium, large. We do a lot of Microsoft 365 digital workspace consulting, and in that we do a lot of automation work as well, and legacy application migration and integration work with SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, Power Automate, Power Apps. So yeah, low code solution is catching up really fast, and it's helping us get some quick wins as well. Other than that, on a hobby side, I love to do photography and some DIY tech projects, like picking up Raspberry Pis and picking up some sensors and playing around with them here and there. It's been a while I have done that, to be honest, but yeah, I still have my stack of those stuff lying around somewhere. And I do run a Microsoft user group here in Chandigarh. So if you are ever in my city, give me a shout out when this whole pandemic stuff is over. I'd love to meet you and show you around. Thank you for our sponsors for sponsoring this event. And the rest of this session is pretty much all practical. So let's move on to our demo straight away. Let me open up. All right. So what we are going to look at, I'm going to show you an end-to-end practical scenario of how this works before we jump into how I did it. So let's go ahead and just copy the link for the form to submit this. I'm gonna go ahead and paste this, and let's go ahead and submit the form, and I'll show you how it works specifically. Let me see if my sessions are working. Okay, there is a problem here. Let me refresh this. So this is a pre-onboarding form. You can customize it. I'm not going to go too much deep into this, and I've just created a simple section to get contact details in a different way and made some required fields over here specifically. That is something you can configure in your form specifically. And it's not necessary that you use Microsoft Forms. You can use Typeform. You can use any other external data push. Why would you need the form URL specifically, Gary? Any specific reason? This is just for demo purposes. I mean, it's a public form right now, so I don't want people to start pushing data into it, so my demo will get affected with it. So okay, now I will go ahead and submit the form. Let me show you exactly what the process looks like in the first place. Um, so let's go ahead and put a John Doe here. Let's put his middle name as middle John Doe. And I've created a section in the Microsoft form. So over here, you can see this is section 1, section 2. So that's where you get this next option when I fill the form. So it divides the form into different sections so it doesn't, you know, expand the whole form in one single place. Now, this is a little bit important. I don't want to publicly display any of my emails at this point. So I'm just going to use a bogus one for now. And I'll just put in my phone number. So this is the process that I've used, guys, is very important in terms of I want to make sure when somebody submits this form, there is an HR person who can sanitize this data, right? So what we are going to do is once this form is submitted, it's gonna go to an HR person, and they are going to basically, let's pick a city. Let's pick Houston. Let's put Texas. Uh, Pray for people in Texas. It's not that city's having a really hard time right now. Um, so we are basically trying to put some details over here. Now, again, since this is a demo at this point, I've made this form really simplistic to make you guys understand how this process works. But ideally, from a realistic standpoint, I would want their permanent address and I would want their current address. And if it's the same, you can actually do branching in Microsoft Forms. So you can collect that data accordingly, and you can ask him whether your permanent address is the same as your current address and get other details that you would need in terms of onboarding this person, right? So once I submit this, what this process does is it will go ahead and submit uh, an adaptive card on this channel, on the onboarding channel specifically. You see right here, John Doe has filled the form. And again, I did not include the middle name specifically on purpose, but it's up to you how you want to do this. And this is where I can sanitize this form. So whoever is the HR person in onboarding, they can, make sure that the channel notifications are on for all activity on this particular channel. Otherwise, they will not know if the form has been posted by Flowbot specifically. Okay, so this is important. Once this is filled in, I can sanitize this data in terms of making changes. Okay, maybe people fill in phone numbers in a very different way. I want it properly formatted, right? So I am trying to sanitize the data from my perspective in in situations where I would want to make the changes. Now, see, this is where I deliberately made the mistake. I'm like, okay, this should have been USA, not India. So I'm going to do that. And from here itself, I can either reject or I can generate an offer letter on a click of a button, right? And it will actually email that person. Now, since this email is bogus, it will not like deliver any email anywhere. So let's see if we can solve that problem. That might not work at this point. So I'll just leave it at this, and I'm going to click on generate offer. And let's go back to the flow and see what will happen. I have a SharePoint site in the backend, which is my onboarding, new employee onboarding site collection. And here I have two lists of two data entities that I'm working with. One is this onboarding data SharePoint list specifically, and then there is this offer letter that I have in terms of the document that gets created once the flow is kicked, right? So let's look at the run history really quick for that flow. And this is really very simple and easy to set up. Once you see the execution of this, guys, I'm going to show you how to actually do this end-to-end scenario specifically. Okay, so let's check where in the process this is at this stage. Okay, did I not? Okay, yes, I did not. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Again, my bad. So once you click on generate offer letter, there is another card, adaptive card that shows up over here. So I have to give him, let's give him salaries in diamonds. So you get, you get 50 diamonds, 50 diamonds per month as your salary, and your position is Power Platform Wizard, right? So this is where the HR will know what salary and what position that person is being offered for, right? So this is something that can be automated in a way where you can instead start this process from SharePoint list with a very basic detail and then have them fill and add on the data. Again, depends on your process, how you want to handle this. But this is just to show you how powerful these different platforms and technologies are in terms of getting yourself an automated HR pre-onboarding process in the first place. Okay. So let's go ahead and approve this. And this is when the flow will start working next. So you can see it already finished a couple of action items here. And I'll go through each one of them and show you exactly how and what I did in the first place. And over here in my onboarding offer letters, I should see my PDF file really soon in terms of the offer letter that is created for me. So let's see where my flow is. It's right now, there you go, and it completed. So my John Middledoe offer letter is completed. Now again, this all file name and everything is configurable. So let's look at the file, and you can see here what has happened. You can see that, let me zoom in a little bit more. The name, the address, the phone number, the sanitized phone number, not the one that he filled in, the country got updated automatically. We are offering him a position of Power Platform Diamond. It picked up the position, and we are giving him this particular salary, right? So I'll show you how to work with this template as well in Microsoft Word, and go from there. All right, so hopefully you guys understand the whole process, the end-to-end, what we've done. And this has actually sent an email to that email address as well. So, oops, my bad. Let me expand this, go back here. So you can see that there was an email that was sent with that attachment. With an attachment right here. There is an attachment to this with a PDF file, and this is the content of that PDF file specifically. So an email was sent to this person as well, which is, I think, pretty amazing in terms of what you can do with these technologies and have one less action item for your human resources people to perform, right? And now what we are going to do, and again, this can be extended with DocuSign or other e-sign capabilities, or you can integrate with the e-signatures as well, right? And in that PDF file that I showed you, you can also include images as signatures. That works in some scenarios, or digitally sign a predefined template in Word and then forward that template specifically. So before I move ahead, let's go through the initial exact steps that I followed to get this up and running specifically. So yes, the first step was to get this form running. And in this form, you would go into settings and make sure anyone can respond, because this person is not, whoever is filling the form, he's not a part of your organization at this point. So he will not have the credentials to log into the system. So you need to make sure, and then you can play around with the other settings. I'm not going to bother too much, but this is what is important. And then what we are going to do after this is directly start working on a SharePoint list where we will maintain our data. So give me 1 second. I just need to do one thing on the other screen, and I'll be back over here. Okay, so what I did over here in SharePoint, I had a new employee onboarding site specifically, and new employee onboarding site specifically. And in this, I created a SharePoint list. And this list has a couple of columns that correspond to my to my Microsoft form data that I'm collecting specifically. So you can see here, I've given the title as the email address. I've given the first name, middle name, last name, phone number, street, and this is where I'm calculating the address automatically. Show you in the I'll show this to you um, in the power ups what I'm do in the Power Automate flow, how I'm calculating this dynamically and putting it. And then there is a status of this. So this is something I was working last night with. This is what I filled in today. And you can see we don't get the actual data that the end user fills. So what you can do here to mitigate that specifically is I'm only creating this item once when the sanitization has been done by the HR person. But ideally, you would want to capture exact information what the end user is filling just for the sake of history. It is important. Otherwise, there can be a little bit of miscommunication where the end user will say, no, I actually filled in this in the form, but they don't remember. So it's better to keep the as is data, enable versioning on the list, and then have your flow that you create update that item after the sanitization is done. That's a better approach for keeping a track of what was filled initially, what was sanitized, and how it was sanitized. And then, of course, since the version history will be there, you will know exactly who operated on it. So that's good from that perspective. If you have any questions or if you don't follow the process, please let me know. I'll clarify certain things over there. So once I have this information, I started creating a Microsoft flow in the first place. So let's look at the flow, what we've done here. I'm going to edit this flow. So the very first step that we do is the way we created this. Actually, let me show you something here. If I go to flow, if I go to new flow, I'm not going to start a flow with a template. So I can just go click on create and click on automated cloud flow. And then I picked this trigger specifically when a new response is submitted in Microsoft Forms. So this is how I created the flow in the first place. And when you create that flow, you basically get the option to pick which form you want to get the response from. So in the drop down, whatever forms you have access to, it will give you those options. So in this case, it's my onboarding form. And then the next step is to get the response details specifically. So the output of this is just a response ID specifically. So you need to fetch the response details from this. And then what I'm doing here is I am composing the whole adaptive card. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. And for me, adaptive cards and creating them and managing them is really easy because of Adaptive Card Designer. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but it is very easy for me to, work with this kind of designer in the browser itself and take this whole code and manage it in my Power Automate. Now, let's understand how I did this from scratch in the first place. Rajat, if the screen is blur, I am actually not sure if it's my internet or your internet. So I'm really sorry if the screen is blur. I'll try to go slow. Okay.
Question.
All right. So you basically need to go to this adaptive card designer in the first place. You can just Google it, or I'm gonna give you the link in the chat window so you can follow. So you need to make sure you pick the host app properly, whether it's a Microsoft Teams Darklight, it doesn't matter. Darklight is just a UI interface for the dark theme. That's it. So I'm going to pick Microsoft Teams, and you have to pick the right target version. Very important, guys, because Microsoft Teams as of now does not support 1.3 version. They've delayed this. They were supposed to get this by I think they were supposed to get this by, if I'm not wrong, by January, but there are some delays in this. I'm really hoping 1.3 comes out, because in 1.3 there are a lot more enhancement in terms of you can put required fields and stuff like that, which at this point in 1.2 is not possible. So I will pick 1.2 here, make sure the selected host app is there, and I'm gonna get rid of all the items in this default card that is there at this point. I don't want any of these. So I'm gonna build something from scratch in the first place. I don't want any action items right now. So this is how I started from this is what I started from scratch. So I would start with a text block. This is what your label is. And I can say, okay, John Doe submitted the form, right? And then to make it a little bit look better, what I will do is I'll do some formatting over here. I can pick a font type if I want over here. These are the only two options available. I'll make it large. I'll make it bold, and I can even give colors over here. So you can play around with these colors one way or the other. I really like this because what you saw earlier when I submitted when I got the form, it was very bland. So with different colors, you can actually pick labels and design colors and make them look like as if they are a part of a section specifically within the adaptive card, right? So I've created this, and then I can basically uh, put a container, make it really look nice in terms of whatever options I have. But for the sake of this demo, I'm going to make it really fast. I'm going to put a text block. I'm going to put an input box. I'm going to put a text block. This is exactly what I did for the other adaptive card. And then what is more important, you see over here what it says, there is a validation error. All inputs must have a unique ID, right? So this one, I would definitely say, give me your first name, right? This is the label, but this is actually the input text. In 1.3, they've enhanced it where you only need an input text and you can put the label for it. You don't need another control on top of it. So I really like that in 1.3. And there are few um, uh, nuances in this UI interface as well in terms of how this works. So you need to make sure you have your IDs in place. This is very important because this is what is required in the JSON response. This is how it captures the response for the data that is filled from adaptive cards. So every single input has to have, an ID, a specific ID, and this is what we will use in our Power Automate to capture the results from the JSON specifically. And you can see over here, even if I remove this bloody placeholder text, it will actually not work at times. So even if I remove this, it will go away from here. But the moment I add another text block, it will re-render it because at the bottom here somewhere it's still there. So sometimes you see it came back again on the top. So you have to make sure you just come back here and remove that line specifically where it's giving you the placeholder text. So there are some nuances in terms of certain columns that you make changes over here and it will not reflect in this payload editor that you have. Forget about this. We don't need to worry about the sample data for now. We don't need that. And what I would also do is in the default value of these input text boxes, I would just put some character over here to make it a little bit easier for me to change this with dynamic values within my Power Automate specifically. So let me show you what I did on the form over here. So this is my complete form that I built. And how did I bring these action items? Let me cover that aspect. So what I can do is add an action and I can say, okay, I'll add a submit action, which will be a reject action. Then I will add a show card action, which will show another card after this is done, right? So this is important. Now I can call this one reject specifically, and the ID should be this. Ideally, I put the same ID, and then you can do the same thing here, generate offer. Now, this is where I might not need an ID per se, but still it's better to put this specifically because this particular action item, remember, we set it to show card. It was not something to submit the card. And you have to make sure the submit action is actually what will tell our flow which action was taken by the end user in Microsoft Flow to be able to take some conditional branching over there specifically on where it will go, right? So what I did is I created another card that asked for salary and position, and then put an approve submit action on top of it, right? So very simple. And then what you need to do is, again, this is a little bit critical here in terms of understanding how this works. So a card, you have to understand the card schema. So even though this looks like a little bit of a low code solution, but it's not that difficult to work with. When you add that particular action button, you will see what it does at the bottom is, this is what it did for my generate offer. So this is where my card should live. Okay. And this is where I can go ahead and create another card in another designer window and insert that card over here by writing a comma, enter, and then I'll paste that whole card. And how do you paste that whole card? You need to remove anything on the top for the first 3 lines, pick from your actions, and you see it's starting with a square bracket here. So I'm just gonna pick everything from here, right here. Oh, come on, why is my mouse not working? Jesus. Okay, so I will pick anything from here at the bottom and go to my square bracket, copy this, go back to my designer. I've put a comma over here and enter this, and voila. If I click on preview now and I click generate offer, this is where I get my another card within a card, right? So this is how I was able to put a card within an adaptive card for getting further details on a specific action. Okay. And then once I have this ready, this whole schema, I will copy this from here and go back to my flow. And I'm writing another compose card action over here where I will dynamically put all the data. So wherever I have the text, so this is where I put in the dynamic data where I've put in has filled the form specifically. And then there, remember where everything was value A over here, right here, all the values like A, I picked that up, removed the quotes and started putting, so this was actually, this looked like this. So this is my first name. So this looked like this when I actually pasted it. So I'm gonna remove this A from here. Actually, let me zoom in as well. I'm sorry, guys. I should have done that in the first place. So I'll remove this A from here and I'm gonna pick the get response details option from the dynamic content and pick my first name. What is my legal first name right here, and put it over here. And one thing I kind of missed on the form, you can actually put a lot of instructions on how to fill the form over here specifically for the end users. So they know exactly what to fill in, what is a legal first name, what is a legal middle name, so they understand that concept in the first place. Not everybody is very clear, especially if there are interns that you're onboarding or there are new joinees, they might have a little bit of a confusion. So it's better to have as much details as possible over there. And general instructions can follow here. The rest you can, the rest you can put more details for your questions. I think there is an option here somewhere, subtitle. So here you can give specific instructions for this. Okay, what should they include in their legal first name? For example, you can tell them, make sure this is the same as depicted in your Aadhaar card, or passport, right? So they know that this is going to be legally bound from that perspective, right? Let's go back to our flow. So this is how I created this whole composition of my adaptive card. Very simple to do, very easy, drag and drop, very low code. The only thing I had to do was remove the values and make them work. And then the next action item that I did, again, pay attention to this one. This is, if you click on the plus action, add an action item, you need to look for a post adaptive card. And there are a lot of options available to you. You need to select the right one over here. So this will just post an adaptive card in a chat or a channel. So you'll have to come up with some mechanism to get the data back from it. This does not do that. But this is what I'm using at this point right here, specifically this one. So it will post an adaptive card to a Teams channel and wait for a response. Why am I posting it to a channel? If it was like an approval thing that I needed from a one person, I would use the above one basically. So over here, it will post directly to the user in an individual chat as a flow bot specifically. But here it is posting it and it is waiting for the response. So earlier you remember my flow was stuck at a particular action because I did not give inputs for the second card. So it will wait and then it will process the next steps. So this is what I used for that specific action item. So in this case, I picked up a Microsoft Teams team as Contoso, picked up a channel that I created earlier for just this onboarding purpose specifically. And in this message, I've just put the output of this compose card. So if you see here, I will see that compose card action and the output that is listed over here specifically, right? And then, okay, this is another trick that I did here. This update message is actually using a markdown language. A lot of the language that is used in adaptive card, not a lot of, it's actually based on markdown language. So whoever is familiar with GitHub and other places where markdown is used, you should know how that works specifically. So let me go back to Teams. You see how this is coming in two different lines. It's not coming in one line. Because the width of this is very limited, and on your mobile phones this will look really weird as well. So I wanted this to be a little bit mobile friendly as well, because if you put this in one line it'll cut off the text, and if you hover over it, it doesn't show the complete details. So in markdown what you need to do is put a full stop and add additional spaces at the end, like 2 spaces, and that is what constitutes as a carriage return, a new line item basically. So that's how I was able to fill this. And why am I doing this? Because once I submit the form, I need to know for which user I submitted it, right? So you can work on your messaging and do that.
Can
Okay.
I respond to my question? Hello?
Yeah, is everybody seeing my
Sir, the
screen is
screen is
blurred?
blurry.
Can you please respond to my question?
When I zoom the screen, it is blurry.
Hello?
Kamlesh, Vijay, are you guys, Vignesh, are you guys seeing it blurred as well?
My voice is not
This is
clear.
I can see perfectly. I can see that.
Hello, can you hear me?
No, the screen is frying.
Yeah, guys, it's probably your internet connection. I'm really sorry. And we'll see what we can do from a recording perspective so you can cover
Hello?
that aspect later on. Um, all right, let's go ahead and continue, guys. We have very few time, we don't have much time left. I want to give at least last 15 minutes for question and answers. So, so this with a dot and additional 2 spaces is what actually got me to get that carriage return enter key in my Teams response card. After it is submitted, it'll show this data specifically. So for that, I had to click should update the card to yes, and then put my update message, what I want over here specifically. And then I'm initializing a variable where I'm getting the response of the card. Now this is where it gets really tricky. So let's understand how this works specifically and how I made this work. Um, let me open up a new window really quick, new file. Ouch, sorry. File, new file. Okay, all right. So this is actually JSON. So let me put this right here. So actually, this is what it is. So how you capture the response from an adaptive card is important. And it took me a little bit of a trial and error in terms of in the initial days when I started with it a while back. But now that I understand the format, it's a little bit more easier for me to do. So the very first thing that I do is make sure that this particular team's card team action item that I have over here, I make sure I rename it to a short form so I can use it easily going forward. And if you look at the run, right, let me duplicate this tab really quick. If you look at the runs of the flows and click on, so this is the last one that I did, I guess. Yes. So when you get to the when you get to this is how you know how the output of that particular action item looks like, and you have your JSON body over here. So this is what helped me determine how my uh, uh, JSON is structured from a raw a data perspective. So it starts with a body, it starts with outputs in the first place, right? Then it starts with the body in the curly braces, and within that you can see there is a data element, and within um, outputs, body, data, and then I have my columns that I have filled in. These are the names that I have given over here as ID fields to these guys right here. So that is where you have to be very careful. Whatever name you're giving here for the ID field is what you will get in your JSON response over here specifically, right? And you can see here I'm getting my submit action ID as approve over here. So what I have to do to get that specifically, it's output, body, and then submit action ID as approved, right? So I don't need to worry about the value. That's what I need to capture, but I need to go to 1, 2, 3 hierarchical stages, and how they work specifically in Teams is like this. So you basically put at the rate when start with the curly braces, then you put outputs, and then the very first string on the top goes in a single quotes question mark, and this is where your body and the data will come. So in my case, for the other one, let me go back here. For this, I can just copy this like this, select this, Control C, go back to my Visual Studio that I have, and do a Control V. Now, what I'm doing here, guys, is directly entering the data in the response over here. I am not creating an expression. Creating an expression is a little bit different. Okay. Yes, Dhaval, if you want blank data, you'll have to put conditioning and manage that on your own. But if you have blank data and you put that over here and there is blank data coming, it will pass on the blank data, as simple as that. It won't error out if that's what your question was. So the good thing about this kind of formatting that I'm using is I don't have to work with the expression screen specifically. I can directly work with that particular format and do this. Okay, so Dhaval, I'll cover that question later. I don't understand what kind of filtering you're asking for, so we'll look at it later. So basically now with the submit action item, I got whether I'm getting an approve or I'm getting a reject option, right? So those are the two values that I will get from my submit actions. And how do I know that? So either the person will click on reject. So reject is having this reject value on the ID side. And this guy, again, I don't need this ID because this is just an action card that opens up another form. So this particular button you see here, I get an JSON response over here for the preview sake. This is a feature of the designer that Microsoft has built. So over here, you can see my submit action item is basically for this particular card over here that I defined, its ID is approve over here. And this is the action of submit action. The other one for this card, the action was show card, right? So I'm either submitting a reject or I'm submitting a approve right here. Okay, so based on that, what I will do is I will first create the item in SharePoint. This is fairly straightforward. And this is where I used this particular formatting, and I would change this email. I would copy this, put this, rename this to, okay, first name, the ID of my first name, copy this row over here specifically, and then paste it in this column. specifically, right? So let's do this. So I remove this. I don't need to work with expressions. I can directly paste this data here and get it from there. Okay. So Dhaval, if the data is insufficient and blank, I would reject it, and the HR person should tell them that you did not fill the form correctly. Please fill the form correctly, and I can improve my reject option where they can on reject also they can put a reasoning behind it, and it automatically sends an email to the end user saying that, hey, your form has this missing detail. Here is the link to the form again. Please fill it properly and then submit it. So that process can be automated as well. Okay. All right. So now what I want to do here is once I create this item in SharePoint, you can see what I did over here for the address. I formatted multiple values, gave it carriage return, and created my address field specifically. And the status over here, I simply put the card response that I want to do. And this card response will give me either reject or approve automatically from here. Again, this is a very simple scenario, so you might need additional variables that you might need to initialize on the top and maintain the status of those variables depending on your business process specifically. And then this is where the condition comes in, where I'm checking whether it's approved or not. If it is approved, if somebody is clicking on approve, then I need to take some actions. This is where it gets interesting. I'm creating a populate a Microsoft Word template. This is a premium feature, so you do need some premium capabilities over here. I'm picking from my OneDrive, and what I've done in my OneDrive, you can see over here in the template, I've created this offer letter. Now, how do you create templates in Word? This is not something I can cover right away, but let me show you really quick how that works in Microsoft Word. And I'm on a Mac, and unfortunately creating those templates on a Mac does not work as of now. Microsoft Word for Mac lacks certain features to be able to do that. So let me get that up and running. Damn it, I had that up and running and my window closed. Come on. Jesus Christ, why are you showing this? Okay, perfect. All right, let me zoom in a little bit. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you have this developer tool open over here specifically. Okay, and then in the developer tool specifically, you will come to your normal letter and click on this, and then click this specific button over here, plain text content control. Remember to choose this one. Don't pick this one. This does not work with Flow as of now. Okay, so let's say, for example, I have another, let's say I want to put the current date over here, right? So I will double click on this. I will click on this over here specifically, and then I will right click on this. And before you do that, you need to enable design mode actually. Once the design mode is enabled, you will know exactly which ones are available to you. Right click on this, click on properties, and give it a name over here and tag it with the same name. Now this particular date will be available to me in my let me just remove this because it's saving directly in my OneDrive live as we speak. So let me turn this autosave off really quick. Perfect. So you will get these names available in your template when you fill. So I've put in name over here. I've put address over here, phone, position, and salary, right? So this is how you create your Word template over here. And again, this is a very rudimentary offer letter. You can create a very nice looking one with e-signatures on it as well. So one person has already signed it from your company before it goes to the next one. Let's get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. So once this is done, I've created a temporary folder. I'll tell you why. So what I do is I pick my template, offer letter template. I see this is where I get my dynamic fields from that template automatically populated in this action item over here. And then I put in the phone number, I put in the name of the person, address, the position, I can directly get the position from the data. You can see here output Steam data, body data position, and then salary. This is what I've been filling in the additional card that shows up in the designer, right? This one, the show card, right? And then what it does after populating a word template is it creates a file in a temporary folder, and I give it first name, middle name, last name, offer letter .docx, and the file content comes from this populate a word template specifically. So once this is done, my file is created. I will convert the file to PDF within using Microsoft OneDrive action over here. And then after I have done this, I will create the file in SharePoint. This is where it works really well in terms of what you want to do. I picked up my site. I picked up my um, document library offer letters, and over there I'm giving the file name and the file content specifically. This file content is coming from this create convert file option dynamically. See convert file content. This is what I'm picking up from this item over here and passing it on to this create file option in SharePoint specifically. Okay, and then I'm simply sending an email and putting that attachment, and attachment I've put the same file content and given it a name, and voila, the whole end-to-end process is done. And I showed you the whole thing in the very beginning of the session, how it works end-to-end. And I'll open the floor for any questions at this point, if you guys have any. And let me check the chat window really quick. How long does the flow wait for the responses? Any timeout? Okay, Tushar, for the timeout on the flows, it depends on your on your flow licenses as well. Once the form is submitted, it will probably take anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes at the max. That's what I've seen till it starts kicking in the process and submits the flow card in your team's channel. Once it submits your flow card in the team channel, then it is just waiting there. And I can show you some of the the run times before that was there. So let's go back here. You can see it took anywhere between 49 seconds to 1.5 minutes to create it. And this one took 4.5 minutes because I was waiting to fill in the particular form in the first place. The rest of the items, once you get the runs executed, you can see how long it takes. So for these, it took a couple of seconds at the max to get each of the items done. And creating the file is the most heaviest one of all. So depending on how big your template is and how many values you're processing, this timeline might go further. Timeout for every action, there is a timeout specifically, so you need to be careful about that. And the flow will timeout in 30 days if you don't do anything. So that's the default timeout for a Microsoft Flow for timeout. And for where is the timeout for every action? So here, if you click on the settings over here, you will see there is a timeout for every single duration as well. So you can increase the timeout for every single action item if there is something.
I have tried it yesterday.
Okay.
The same link. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you type your question in the chat?
Yes, I'm the same person.
All right, let me go through the other questions. Tushar, I've answered yours. Dhaval, I'm not following Excel files. Maybe you're having conversation with Double Site, maybe. Navneet, your question is how we have made sure that other adaptive card is hidden and not shown only on a button click, and what if we want to hide other adaptive card again? Huh. Interesting.
Hello.
What I'm answering another question right now. Just hold on. So how we have made sure that other adaptive card is hidden? what adaptive card is hidden. It's a show adaptive card option over here. Let me put it in preview mode. So this one will reject, this one will submit the option. This is when we click and we get the other adaptive card. So it's on a click of a button where you take another path in the adaptive card to say that, okay, I want to generate offer, give me these two inputs, and then I will approve this basically. So I hope that answers your question of needs specifically. Vijay or Vignesh, can you put the link for the feedback form in the chat window so people can give feedback on the session specifically? All right, Dhaval, I know you've been asking a lot of questions. Tell me what exactly are you looking for? Dhaval Arora.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me now?
Yes, I can.
So my question is that suppose if there's any file, suppose there's an Excel file, and we have data of some people, maybe a list of 100 rows, and we always have some people who doesn't fill their form properly, and we have some blank data. And I want to put a condition that whenever I want to pass my value to the output, it should filter only the non-blank columns and should stop the blank columns, and whether it can go to the other file, text file or Excel file as insufficient data, and the sufficient data should go to the output folder in maybe SQL or the other Excel file, or uploaded or somewhere in the cloud. So
बॉस आप मेरे को example दो, scenario based example दो, because in this case what you looked at in my case, you see in the onboarding form itself, I've made sure that they cannot move to the next level because these are required fields, right?
yes.
So the output of this will not go forward unless you put in these values in the first place. So whatever process your data is getting into the Excel file, I would look at that process and make sure that is properly done. And in your flow, will become very tedious, because in the flow, if I have to handle this, I will have to practically create every single condition to check if first name is empty, if last name is empty, if this is empty, and then take action based on that. So yes, it can be done, but it will be very tedious. I would rather look at the beginning of the process and make sure somebody doesn't fill in and have that form proper with the validation. Okay.
Okay, so I will contact you personally on your whatever link you are sharing, maybe LinkedIn or any other social media link you have.
Sure. Sounds good. I'm mostly available and accessible on LinkedIn. Just search for Jasjit Chopra and you can connect with me there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot.
All right. Manish, when we create approvals tasks and we mark notifications as yes, it sends notification to approver in email as well as Teams. Is there a way to turn off notification of Teams only? Sorry, Manish, I haven't played around with approvals specifically in much detail. I don't have an answer for you at that point, and I don't even know what notifications it sends right now. I know Microsoft has rolled out another application called Approvals. I haven't played around with it much as of now. Okay, let me see if we missed any question. Sujit says, why did we need a temp folder to convert to PDF? Good question, Sujit. Let me tell you why specifically. So let's go back. That is just my way of segregating that temporary folder, and just for me to know what is happening in the background, right? So if I go to offer letters, sorry, in my OneDrive specifically, where it is. So temp folder, you see, this is actually the Word document that's created, and this is just for my reference sake that this is how the Word document was filled in the first place. That's one option for me. And the other thing, if I look at my flow, is I have to have a reference of that file before I can take the next action, right? So let me edit my flow and show you. I need over here when I'm creating that, when I'm converting that file, I need a file somewhere to be placed in the first place so I can convert it to PDF. Until I have the reference of that, I will not do that. That's why I've created it temporarily in a temp folder to convert it to PDF in the first place. And then once it's converted to PDF, I don't need to save that PDF in the Word document, in that temporary folder. I can directly save it in my target location in SharePoint specifically and share it in the email with the end user. So yes, I should have actually sent it to my own email ID as well to show you how that works. But for now, hopefully that answers your question. And ideally, I would add one more step. Once this is all done, I would add another step over here, add an action, and delete that temporary file that I've created. So if there is no need for it, you can delete it, but you need it at a point in time in reference it is required. Okay. All right, let me check in chat if I have any other questions. Timeout for approvals in Power Automate is 30 days. Is it still the same? Yes, it is the same for adaptive cards. We've already worked extensively and checked that, but you have to make sure that every single item action that you are doing, these actions also have their own timeouts specifically. So you need to make sure that you work with this particular property for every single action item that might become a bottleneck for your flows in terms of